Hello friends, I'm Tim Wildsmith, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 best-selling translations of the Bible. I get asked all the time by viewers about my favorite Bible translations, which ones I read the most, which ones I like, which ones I don't like, and yes, I've teased this several times over the years that I'm working on a project about Bible translations. I'm not ready to share that, but I am working on it still, and it's going to be awesome when it arrives. But in the meantime, I thought it would be fun to take a look at the best-selling Bible translations. There's something called NPD, let me look it up here, NPD Book Scan, which basically is it's a data set that scans and keeps track of book sales, Bible sales, anything you can imagine. And a company called the ECPA, the Evangelical Christian Publishers Association, releases that data. They take NPD Book Scan, they release best of lists, top 10 lists, things like that for books, for Bibles, anything that you can imagine. They do it every month, but they also do an annual one. So I've actually been kind of looking through the data for like the past decade, the annual data of best-selling Bible translations. I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to start by sharing with you the top 10 from 2022 and then some insights that I think are interesting because there's a couple of unique changes that happened in 2022 that I think are worth examining and asking questions about. Okay, so top 10 best-selling Bible translations. This is for the year 2022. Number 10 on the list is The Message. Now, some of you may be rolling your eyes immediately when you hear me say that because a lot of people say The Message is not a Bible translation, but a Bible paraphrase. Now, I'm neither here nor there on that. I actually read the biography, a really great biography of Eugene Peterson, the guy who translated The Message, and learned more in that book about all of the work and the time and the energy that went into the project of The Message. I'm a big fan of Eugene Peterson. I'm a big fan of his writing, and I think that he considered The Message to be a translation. So whether or not you consider it a translation or a paraphrase, The Message is a very readable, modern version of the Bible, and it is the number 10. When you consider it, if you put it in with other Bibles, it is the number 10 best-selling translation of the Bible, and it's kind of been in that spot for a while, either number 9 or number 10. So in 2022, it was number 10. Number 9 was the New American Standard Bible. Now, based on all of the data that I looked at most of the years for the past decade, the NASB and the Message have been flip-flopping at the 9 and 10 position. So this is pretty standard. The NASB, of course, last year a bunch of publishers started putting out new releases of the NASB in the updated NASB 2020. This data does not tell us whether or not they're doing just the 2020 or the 95. I assume that this means all New American Standard Bibles being published, but it probably doesn't include the Legacy Standard Bible because that's seen as something different. So I can imagine it probably hopped up on the list a little bit because there's more new Bibles coming out, more people buying the NASB because there's new editions of it, that sort of thing. So the NASB was number 9. Number 8 is an interesting one, and I would not have guessed that this would be in the list. But number 8 is not the New International Version, but the New International Reader's Version, the NIrV. Have you heard of that? I'm not actually very familiar with it. I know what it is. So the NIrV is an even more simplified version of the New International Version. It's made to be at an easier reading level, and one of the reasons why they did that was because it's a translation that's used for a lot of children's Bibles. So when you think about that, top 10, there's probably a lot of kids' Bibles sold out there. Think about, again, I don't think I said this earlier, this list compiles, the NPD Book Scans compiles books that are sold on Amazon, Walmart, Target. I mean, it's not everything around the world, but it's a lot. I mean, you imagine there's probably a ton of children's Bibles being sold every year, and a lot of those are using this simplified version of the NIV called the NIrV, the New International Reader's Version. So that is at number 8 on the list. And again, pretty much for the last 10 years, it's been there in that last 3 kind of bottom 3 positions. It's very, very popular because kids' Bibles are very, very popular. Now, number 7, another one that I didn't consider when I thought, what's going to be on the list? I did not consider that a Spanish Bible translation would be in the top 10, but of course it is because there's so many people speaking Spanish around the world. So number 7 on the list is the Reina Valera. Some people know it as the RVR or the RVR 60. This is the Spanish translation of the Bible that is most commonly equated to the King James Bible. I actually did some research on it after I saw this list and learned that the RVR came out before the KJV. It was actually a few years earlier in the 1600s that this translation of the Bible came out, and it is to this day the most popular Spanish language Bible. There's some other newer modern ones, but the RVR, the Reina Valera, is still the most popular one, and it's the 7th best-selling Bible of 2022. Okay, this is where things start to get interesting in the top 6. In 2022, in the 6th position was the NKJV, the New King James Version. And based on the research that I did, this is the first time the NKJV has fallen out of the top 5 in quite some time. Very, very interesting. Now, it's also note that it flip-flopped with last year's number 6, which is the Christian Standard Bible. So the CSB took the NKJV's place at number 5. They flip-flopped. So CSB, if you don't know, is published by the Holman, which is Lifeway. The Holman Bible's Lifeway. It used to be called the Holman Christian Standard Bible. They updated that. So it's a more thought for thought. They call it a dynamic translation, kind of in that spectrum. It's kind of in the middle of the translation spectrum. So the CSB jumps up, whereas the NKJV, which has been around since the 1980s, is kind of an update of the King James Version, which is more on the formal word-for-word side of things. It drops down. I think that's interesting that a kind of more dynamic, modern-sounding Bible is inching up, whereas a kind of more classic word-for-word Bible is inching down. So I'm not sure that 5 and 6, again, what I would really be interested to see is the raw data. Like, is number 5 and number 6 like a difference of 100 Bibles being sold, or is it thousands or tens of thousands? I don't have that data. If anyone out there has it, I would love if you could share it with me, because I'm fascinated by that sort of thing. Now, if those two are interesting to you, just the switch there, this is really interesting, because the number 4 translation of 2022 was the King James Bible, the KJV. And this is the first time that it has fallen out of the top 2 in a long time. The KJV, still going back to 1611, over 400 years, is one of the most popular translations of the Bible ever. It has a huge legacy. It has a huge history that is very important, but it dropped 2 spots from number 2, where it's been for a long time, all the way down to number 4. Again, I don't have the raw data, but that's really wild to me that the KJV fell 2 spots, because I think of it as being really entrenched in people's hearts and in churches, and not just because of like the KJV only community who only use it, but a lot of people really love and revere the King James Bible. So the fact that it dropped a couple of spots in 2022, even though you might think, well, they're just publishing other Bibles. No. The King James Bible is published more than probably any other translation of the Bible. It is so many different options out there, particularly affordable ones. So you think they would be, if you go to Walmart, you see, oh, I'm going to grab a King James Bible. You think, oh, there's a lot of people buying those. But the fact that it dropped down to number 4 is wild to me. And then the 3 that are ahead of it are modern editions of the Bible. Number 3 is the New Living Translation. Now, this is the same spot that the NLT has been the last few years, but the fact that it's ahead of the King James Bible, the New Living Translation, is ahead of the King James Bible. Again, it tells me a really readable, accessible version of the Bible published by Tyndale and other people, but Tyndale is the primary publisher, is extremely popular to be the number 3 best-selling Bible translation. And I think the headline this year is that the NLT is selling better than the KJV, which is just a really wild thing to think about. Now, number 2 on the list is one that replaced the KJV, and it flopped with the KJV. It was number 4 last year. It's number 2 this year, and that is the English Standard Version, the ESV. Now, I've gone on record here. Publisher of the ESV is Crossway. I've said they came out with the Bible in 2001, so it's been a little over 20 years. And I've said this many times on my channel that I think Crossway is a fantastic Bible publisher. They have so many different shapes and sizes and types of Bibles. Like, there is something for everyone. And in the world of kind of evangelical, conservative Christianity in America, the ESV has become increasingly popular over the years. So it makes sense to me that it is jumping up. Now, it is a more word-for-word, literal translation of the Bible, but it's still very, very popular, and the publisher does a great job. So to see the ESV climbing these charts over the years is really fascinating to me. And the fact that it jumped up to number 2, trading spaces with the King James Bible, that's a big thing, right? The ESV is extremely popular. It's not like it was 10 or 15 years ago when they put out the ESV Study Bible and sold 1 million of them because it was something new and exciting. That's been around for a long time. So they've kind of built this consistency into their translation, and it's jumped all the way up to number 2. And then the number 1 translation, which shouldn't be that big of a surprise if you keep up with this sort of thing, it's been number 1 for a long time, is the NIV, the New International Version. A Bible that I grew up with, that many people in the world of America in particular, and conservative Christian America, like it was the one that a lot of people recognize as the Bible that they used for a long time, particularly in the 80s and the 90s. In the 80s, I think it was kind of NKJV and NIV battling it out, even as the NLT and the ESV and the CSB have come along since the NIV, it's still number 1. So ESV is climbing, NLT has climbed, CSB seems to be climbing, the kind of newer translations of the Bible, but the NIV holds its spot as the most popular. I don't know if we could say most popular, but it is, according to the data, the best-selling Bible translation is the New International Version. So that's the data. Again, I examined all of the year-by-year statistics and things like that. I thought it was really interesting. The big note, I think, the big headline is the KJV drops 2 spots. And what does that mean? Does that mean that people are going away from a translation that is a little bit harder to read, is a little bit less in modern language, and they're opting for something like the NLT, the NIV, the ESV, the CSB that's a little bit easier to read? I think that makes sense, that could be one of the reasons. Is it just the popularity of these translations and the branding and the marketing? That also has to be a factor. Now, it's also interesting to note the translations that aren't in here. I talk about the NRSV, which is a more academic translation of the Bible, very, very popular in other places of the world, not as much in America. It's not even cracking the top 10, which those of you, my friends out there, are like, why don't we get an NRSV this or an NRSV that? Well, because it's simply not one of the best selling. So publishers are probably not putting all of their time and their energy into new editions of translations that are not going to be probably ever able to crack the top 10. Even things like the Legacy Standard Bible, like if fans of the NASB, which is always number 9 or 10 on the list, are moving to the LSB, but probably not all of them. You see, that's a pretty small segment of the Bible sales market. So I wonder if something like the LSB can grow enough to crack into the top 10 on one of these lists. I really don't know. I'm trying to think of what else we're missing in there. Older translations that are still being published. You know, we get some RSV stuff here and there. There's no Catholic translations in this top 10 list. So now some of this, again, we're not covering every single book or Bible that's sold around the world. I'm sure there are some stores, some websites that are not reporting, but this MPD book scan gets a lot of them. So I think this is pretty solid data to kind of give us a big picture look at the best-selling Bible translation. So my questions for you are a couple things. What do you notice about this list? What questions do you have? Please leave those in the comments. And where do you see your favorite translation on the list? Does it surprise you? Is it curious to you why some of these changes are happening? I'd love to have those conversations in the comments of this video. But it's interesting to me to see kind of some of the more popular translations based on sales, also with the interweaving of different translations on that translation spectrum. You know, so more formal, word for word versus more thought for thought, dynamic translations, that sort of stuff. Just to see how they're all doing. Something like the Message, or again, the ones that I wasn't expecting, the NIrV and the Spanish language Reina Valera. I didn't expect those to be in the top 10, but they're obviously selling enough that they're becoming very, very popular, and that they're being used widely by people because they're selling a lot. So again, really interesting. I was checking this out online, and I thought this would be a fun video to kind of talk through the top 10. So there they are, your top 10 Bible translations based on sales for the year 2022. I kind of walked you through. I'll put up a screen right now that shows you 2020, 2021, and 2022, and I'll kind of highlight the differences between those top 10 lists. You can see in 2020, basically almost everything before 2020 for the last decade, there wasn't a ton of significant changes. You see in 2021, there was those bottom 2 flip-flopped. But in 2022, there were some significant changes all across the top 10. So I'm excited to keep up with this. Even here in the first few months of 2023, it's kind of staying consistent with this year in 2022. But I'll keep an eye on it. I'll see what happens at the end of this year, and I'll update you along the way. So hey, this was a lot of fun for me. If you like a video like this, smash that like button for me. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed this, share it with your friends. Let them watch it, check it out, that sort of thing. And definitely surf around on my channel and find some other videos to check out. My goal here at Bible Review Blog is to help you find a Bible that's right for you. I have a bunch of playlists by translation. So if you're looking at this going, hey, maybe I need to check out the NKJV, go find my NKJV Bibles translation, check out all the great NKJV Bibles that I've reviewed. Maybe you'll find something that you want to add to your Bible library, spend some time with it. And again, like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.